What up? Good morning. It's Golden Spaces, an Odyssey original podcast with Justin and Nat. But you're seeing a new face up here with us. We're so happy and glad and overjoyed to be joined this morning by, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I'm getting notifications on my phone. But we're so happy to be joined by Mujtaba Elgoodah. Did I get that right?
You did.
See, it's not that hard to pronounce names. This is a big thing for me, people. So make sure you learn how to pronounce people's names. But we're going to call him, for purposes of this discussion, because he's given us permission, Moo, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Muse. So thank you for joining us today. He's a manager of player development.
Team development.
Team development. There you go. Manager of team development with the Warriors. I had the distinct pleasure of meeting him the last time that I was in the Bay, and I was so excited. And I wanted him to join today to talk with us and give us some insight on the Warriors in this crazy season. And I'm sure you're going to find him as lovely as I do. So, Mew, welcome to the show.
The hell of an introduction. I feel like you put a lot of pressure on me, so I hope I don't hurt.
There's never any pressure here. It's all good. It's all love, right, Justin?
All love. I just found out we got another DC guy, so we got that connection going right there. She gonna hate because she's from New York. It's all good though.
You said Georgia?
I'm outnumbered. I got to deal with Marcus giving me hell at night because I say New York slang. He's like, you in the Bay. You got to say the Bay stuff. And now I'm like surrounded by DC folks. Where is New York? Come on, represent. All right. So last night was good. So we high energy this morning. So just so y'all know, because I'm still on the West Coast in the Bay, and so is Moose. So like, we're early for us right now. It's a little after 8 a.m, not so early for Justin. So, but we're recording this morning because obviously we need to talk about this Warriors game from last night, which was a big difference than their last game versus the Wolves, which they fell a little short in. So I don't know, Mil, for you, is it like it is for us? And I say for us, like Justin and I, this is a fan podcast. Do you guys get impacted emotionally the way we do by the Warriors' losses? And I mean, this season is a little different. So it's just been a lot of turmoil and up and down. But does it have the emotional toll on you that it does for us?
It's funny. That's a question that I always get asked by like friends, family, fans, whoever. And it's like yes and no, because obviously we're invested not only from an emotional standpoint, but just from a professional standpoint in terms of like, we put a lot of time and effort into this, obviously not as much as the players, but so we want to see them and see the team succeed. But the other side of it is, I think if we allowed ourselves to get emotionally wrapped in every loss or win, we probably all have heart attacks. And so it's that balance of like trying to understand like we're working towards a common goal. So, even like I look back to, I want to say it was the Clippers loss on the road like 2 weeks ago or so. That was one of our better road performances in such a long time. So we always have to have this switch where we step back and say, look, you have to take the positives. It's a loss. You never want to lose, but you have to step back and take the positives. So like, I want to say for the most part, yes, like we'll be sitting there like, damn, like especially in terms of how it depends on how we lose. If it's just like games where, we're loose with the ball or we're beating ourselves, then it's like we know we're a lot more capable of doing better than that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Justin and I have talked a lot about that because, fans in general, I think are just upset the team is losing. So, but we've pointed out that like, look, the losses now, while it still sucks that they're happening, they look very different than the losses that were occurring earlier in the season. And the Warriors are definitely playing better. And so we have to make note of that. But I ain't gonna lie to you, there have definitely been some times I've had to go into my weekly therapy session like, listen, they are Tamara. This is an issue, okay? Like it's and she'd be like, Natalie, is this really how you want to spend your therapy session? Yes, it is, because they're causing me mental distress.
Nah, I feel it. I feel it. We definitely had moments like that too earlier in the season.
How often do you like check the Twitter, like the Warriors Twitter space, and see like all the overreactions and live tweets and stuff like that? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never been asked that. Twitter is my favorite social media app. I don't really like post on Instagram. Twitter, I'll check daily, and now they got that like For You tab, and so
Oh yeah,
that's all I'll see is like basketball and Warrior stuff. And there's like, and I don't know how we get found, but there was, I want to say it was in like December or January. There was like a 8-week period where it was just random fan accounts tagging me, Coach Kerr, and everybody in the front office, like, yo, do this, do this, do this. And so, like Steph says, we definitely see y'all of that.
So they know what a psycho I am, is what you're saying, huh?
Nat, you're not too bad, and I love when you go off on people. So
yeah, sometimes though my going off includes Kerr. So if he ever finds that out, he probably won't be a fan of me, but that's okay. I can live with that. I also love that you're like, we in reference to the team, which you deserve to say because you actually work with the team. We're a part of the Warriors. But, we say that on here too. Like, we're a part of the team. Yeah, we got to do this tonight.
I've never, and I think a lot of people never really had issues with that because I'm Justin, you probably so I'm a diehard Commanders fan. And sometimes on the turmoil they put me through, I envision myself like that. And then I think the other piece of it too is like, fans are like, I know, people try to sometimes separate them, and I don't really think so. It's more sort of athletes, but like fans are a part of the team. Like they drive a lot. Like a game like last night, we don't go on that big run down 20 without the energy that Draymond obviously infuses into the team, but also Chase Center. And so it is now there is a point where it kind of crosses over, but I do think fans have the right to really kind of align themselves with the team.
Oh, thank you. That makes me feel better that you find it, there's a level, but acceptable. Gonna just derail the conversation here for a minute because you brought up the Commanders. And I want to know why y'all team is acting so new, like they're too good for Lamar Jackson. Do they not need a quarterback? Because y'all don't have him right now.
Justin, you want me to go in or you want to go in first?
Yeah, you go ahead. You got it.
Man, if you'd have asked me 6 years ago, like before, or 5 years ago, before I joined a front office, I would have been like, and a part of me is still like, yo, make that move because I think we're a quarterback away. But then when you look at how the money aligns, if you bring him in, you got to sign him to a new deal. And so, because he's a free agent, so it's not even an extension. That means it would kick in this year. We have about $2 or $3 million left in salary cap, so that means he's looking to make around $30 million. That means you got to trade a player or players that equate up to that surplus $28 million. So that means you're going to give up a couple of those pieces that make you only a quarterback away. So that's one piece. And then I think, if as Justin knows, with the Albert Haynesworth moves and all the big money splash signings we made in the past, what's his name, Josh Norman, they never worked out. And so I think there's a little bit of PTSD amongst that organization in terms of like, all right, look, if we trade 2 first-round picks and we got to trade a Daron Payne or someone that's impactful, and Lamar gets hurt or he doesn't produce the same value, now we've traded away a player that's in the mid-20s, that's cheaper than the quarterback, and 2 first-round picks, which are valuable in football. So I see where they're coming from. But the fan side of me is like, boy, do y'all see how that man plays? That's the best quarterback outside of Patrick Mahomes. Go get that man.
Wow. No, Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback outside of Patrick Mahomes. I am an Eagles fan.
After 1 year?
Yes, we're not going to have this debate right now. When football season is back, we will have a football special and come back on. But so yes, as a NFC East person, like, I'm glad that you guys don't want him and you will continue the stupidity in that franchise. But I just don't understand how Eric Bieniemy and a reunion with Lamar Jackson would not be a good thing. Like, I don't care who you have to trade. Like, he's a generational talent. Like, players like him don't grow on trees. Like, his value will far exceed anything those players you're giving up provide you. But, to each his own.
Nah, that's facts.
Yeah. Man, I feel like if you're going to go in.
Yeah, go ahead, Justin. Go ahead. Get your say off.
If you're going to go in on like a big money splash, I would do it on the quarterback. You know what I mean? I think it's like you said, we've been a quarterback away for a while. You give up some of those pieces, but at the end of the day, like I think championships are won. They're won and lost with quarterback play. So I think you make that move, in my opinion.
And I'm in agreement with y'all. I was just trying to give you their perspective, but I'm with y'all. Go get that man.
Come on, we all know this is collusion by the owners. Like, how is no one interested in Lamar Jackson? Like, what is this? This is crazy. Anyway, all right. Yeah, it's Golden Spaces, but we get into all of it on this podcast. Okay, back to our Dubs, back to our beloved Dubs. So let's talk about last night. Let's talk about last night and what went down in the game. So we started off the game. Now you got me using we because you gave me permission, so I'm an OD with it now. But the game started off, and at first I was like, nah, maybe I really may be bad luck for the Warriors because I had a little issue like getting there yesterday. It's this. I'm gonna just tell y'all my personal business real quick. So there's this. I don't know what it is with Uber in San Francisco, but the address for like the media entrance where you go into to enter the arena, for whatever reason, Terry Francois, that's the street, right? For whatever reason, you put in that address and it does not take you there. It happened to me the last time I was here. I thought I was putting in the wrong address. This time I put in the address for Mission Rock, that restaurant across, like it's still, it brings you to the wrong location. So many of the times when the drivers are from, the Bay, I'm like, no, this is not it. I'm like, look at the address because the address is there. And I'm like, look, we're not even on this block. And they're like, but this is where the system takes me, right? So but they'll still bring me there. But the guy last night refused. He's like, you got to call Uber. It's their fault. I'm like, sir, look at the address. Like, we're not even on that street. And so I had to like walk over. So I didn't get in, and I was already like working late for my other job. So I didn't get into like maybe like a few minutes into the game. And when I first came in, it was like either tied or a 1 point difference. But I swear that's when it just all went downhill. Like,
that explains it.
I was like, what the hell, yo? Because I mean, when I came last time, I think they only won one game or two games during that homestand, and then like the final 3-day loss. And I'm like, yo, I may really be bringing the squad bad luck. So, but anyway, they turned it around, and they basically got rid of that theory for me. Thank you, because I could not give up watching the Dubs and covering them. So. But yeah, I mean, the game starts off, it's sort of even. And I agreed with Steph in his post game where he said, like, I actually thought our energy was fine to start because there was a lot of this, like, we didn't bring what we needed in the first. And I'm like, I didn't actually see that. But like, I was tweeting about throughout the game and I'm like, man, like, just nothing is falling the Warriors' way. Like, I mean, not a call, not a rebound. Like, they get a stop, but then somehow, the Pels just still came up with the ball. So I'm just like, the Warriors got to weather this storm because at some point, law of averages, things will start to turn in their favor. And it did. But what Steph said is like, just all those plays back to back, it becomes deflating. And I did think that was like a really accurate description. So I'm curious to know what you thought about like while the game was happening and unfolding, what you were seeing.
Yeah, and I think Steph voiced it perfectly because we came out and our energy was good. And Justin, I'm sure you saw those first couple of minutes, but we were making everything. The issue was, so were they. And so I want to say it was like 26-27. That's probably when you walked in that, if I remember the score correctly. And that's when everything kind of compounded and we just couldn't hold on to the ball. And one of our biggest downfalls this year has been really just throughout this whole era has been live ball turnovers. And we had a lot of those. The Pelicans, I mean, I'll honestly credit to them because I don't want to just all put it on us. They lead the league in deflections for a reason. And then Brandon Ingram was on one. And I think it's because JK had a really good defensive game on him last time they were in the Bay. And so I think he came out with a lot of energy. He was making a lot of tough shots, and then Valanciunas was just killing us on the glass. So I think it was a culmination of just a bunch of different things, a bunch of the things that have plagued us this season, all happening at once. And that's how they got off to that big lead. And I just think, like, our energy was good to start, and then we kind of hit a lull once those turnovers happened. But the one thing that I will say that was kind of encouraging was one thing that's plagued us this year is when the ball stops moving. And we didn't really have a chance for the ball to move to the second side because it kept getting turned over. But like our guys were actively looking to get others involved. And as anybody that watches the Warriors knows, if that ball isn't moving, we're not the patented Warriors offense that we normally are. And so I'm glad we didn't get away from that and no one tried to play hero ball. And then Draymond just got us started with all of with all the energy. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people outside of the Warriors fan base, because I will say one thing about that I love about the fan base is there's never a shortage of kind of gratefulness towards Draymond. And a lot of people outside of the Warriors fan base don't really see how he impacts the game at such a high level. And it's little kind of games of chess moments like that where it's like I see my guys need a little pump. I'm not just gonna yell and be loud. Like I'm gonna be engaged defensively. I'm 6'5", but I'm taking on a 7-footer in the post. Like little things like that. Anybody that's ever hooped or done anything competitive, you see, one of your leaders do that. It's like I bet I gotta fall in line and do the same. And I think once that happened, 30's best player in the world, so he does what he do. JP, when he gets going, we know what he can do. Dante's energy was crazy. Like it just, we got so many guys that can impact the game, and once they kind of felt comfortable to do what they do, we went on that massive run. And so it was an up and down game. I think you saw the best of what we could be at moments, but you also saw kind of some of the things that have plagued us all year early in the game.
Yeah, I know Justin has something to say, but I just want to say we're going to revisit your 30 is the best player in the world later. So just remember that thought. But we're going to revisit that later, but I don't want to derail the conversation again.
Well, I was gonna ask when Draymond kind of gets into his bag, like, how does everybody react? Is it kind of like okay, we know what he's doing? Is it like hey, you need to chill? Because I understand like he's been doing this thing for years, right? Where he's the emotional leader, he's trying to get everybody involved, but he may like toe that line a little bit. Like he definitely could have gotten a second tech if Ed Malloy decided, and that obviously would have impacted that game and the next game. But he knows how to get all the way to that line and not go over. So how is it, I guess, with the coaching staff and everybody else involved, like trying to make sure that they keep him in that moment, but make sure that he doesn't take the next step to get, the repercussions that we don't want.
Yeah, it's a fine line. I think the reason, and really a lot of that is on Steve, and I think kind of that managing that, and I think the reason he's able to do it is because first and foremost, that's Dre. Like it's some dudes that try to, okay, I see my guys need something. Let me put something together. And nah, that's who he is. So when he's on that type of time, it's genuine. So it's not like that's the dude hates losing. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't matter how many championships or how many All-Stars, Hall of Fame, whatever. He's always going to consider himself an underdog. And so I think Coach Kerr notices that, but then you also see like moments like last night where he saw a situation where it could get a little chippy, so he subbed him out for JK. Like and people might not notice that. And I went back and rewatched the game afterwards on the TNT broadcast, and I think it was Van Gundy that was saying, "Man, that's exceptional coaching." People don't realize that, but in that moment, telling a player like Draymond, is so established as a vocal and on-court leader, like, it's getting a little chippy. I don't want you to get that second tech because we're not winning this game without you. And to take him out, and I think he took him out for like 45 seconds, but he just needed that 45 seconds. Coaching isn't all about X's and O's. There's little things like that. So for the most part, you gotta let the dog go. But then there's times where, coach will get involved in like that. From the front office perspective, we don't really try to get involved in like that because that's who he is, and we wouldn't be who we are if he wasn't like that.
Word. Yeah. I mean, when we're watching, it's like, Dre, please, like, I need you to like chill. So I was glad Kerr pulled him. I did ask Draymond last night about the technical foul and if he thought it would be rescinded, and he flipped the script on me. He was like, "Do you think it should be rescinded?" I was like, "Yes." I mean, I had to think for a split moment if I want to answer that because I'm just like, I know what I think, and I think everyone knows I ain't afraid to express my opinion. But I was just like, for people to be like, oh, I'm being biased, but like, fuck it, I'm gonna just answer it after though. Because I do think it should be rescinded, and largely it's not because I didn't think that in the game last night that Dre probably earned a few texts, to be honest. And I mean, I think the refs are aware of his situation. And so this is almost like a great thing for Dre because he can really push it and they're going to let him push the boundaries because, I mean, they know what's going to come in terms of the attention, you know, like Luka. And I mean, Luka's tech got rescinded. So that's sort of why I'm hopeful that Dre's might get rescinded because, I mean, if he gets a second now one, that's another suspension. And the team can't afford a second suspension to close out, you know, the remaining, what is it, 5 games left now without Dre. So he said he thinks it will. I said I think it will. But do you have any thoughts on that?
I think, obviously, I hope it does. And I don't want to say anything that's perceived as, you know, insulting the ref, so I don't catch a fine. But to me, is when I
too.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. I'm not trying to get you in.
No, and I'm not, because to me it's like, you know, and again, when I was rewatching it, like by the law of the book, you know, Ingram approached him, and so I think Draymond did a really good job of not instigating it anymore, and so I think they're gonna look at that, and I hope. But so based off of what I saw, you know, I hope it gets rescinded. Obviously, we're gonna do a weekend to try and get it rescinded, and so. But yeah, just watching it again, it wasn't like he, came up on him. They called the flagrant, and then he kind of just like, as he said in the post game, was like just defending his space. And so to me, I feel like, it should get rescinded.
Cool. You mentioned Jonathan Kuminga earlier. At a couple of points, him being subbed in for Dre at that point, but earlier, I thought like Kuminga's impact in the fourth was just so tremendous. What did you see from him last night, and how do you feel about his development as a player so far to this point? I know that's already 2 questions I asked, so if you need me to repeat, because you're not supposed to do that, but there's one more. I also want to know, because we kind of have this Andrew Wiggins thing looming, and we just send love and prayers all the time over here to Andrew. We hope he gets back, like Steph said, but in case, or for some reason he doesn't, or maybe it's not till even later into the postseason, I feel like Kuminga is going to have to be one of the players that will have to step up and will be needed. So I kind of like your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. So the first part you said was his impact last night, and then just
and his overall development this year.
Yeah, I think it's so funny because I'll talk to JK about this all the time. He doesn't he'll always be like, man, I don't got the bounce that I used to when I was younger. And I'm like, bro, you're 20. What are you talking about? And with him, I think it's just, he comes from such humble beginnings. I think to me, one big thing that I always like to do is separate the person from the player. But then there's moments you got to combine the two. And just outside of basketball, the kid comes from humble beginnings and then came here when he was 13, essentially raised himself. And so there's just a greediness and toughness in terms of I don't care who you put in front of me, I'm guarding. To me, to be an elite defender, you have to have that first. You can have the physical abilities, the athleticism, the IQ, all of that. But if you're not willing to go into a dogfight, and I think it's impressive how quickly he's gained that. If you watch his games, he really kind of, raises his game to another level when he's matched up against those marquee guys. And for me, it's to do this in your second year where it's the fourth quarter, this is a guy that's been going off, but you know what I'm saying? We want you to go back and forth between CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram. That's so important to our team, especially with Gary being out and Wiggins being out. It's being able to throw him, Dante, and Draymond out in certain lineups, that helps us so much in terms of versatility. So I think his impact yesterday, the ability to knock down corner threes, and he's been shooting at them at a really high rate over the last month, that just helps us so much more. So I think the sky's the limit with JK. I think he's developing. he's continuing to round out his game offensively. I think the coaches are understanding where to put him in certain positions to make him successful. I think AV, his player development coach, has been terrific with him this year, not just from a basketball standpoint, but also just from a human to human standpoint. So in terms of his overall development, I think, man, Jake, he doesn't like being compared to players. So I'm not going to compare him to a player, but I think his ceiling is it's really as high as he allows it to be. I think defensively, he's already a game changer. His ability on that end, I think, is going to be up there with some of the best players in the league. And then you have these glimpses where you see him like that pump fake is just he sells it so well, and then that handle is getting really tight, and then the speed, the quickness, you get that shot to fall. Like he had some games earlier this month where we don't win without his impact, and so I think that he's getting a little bit more freedom, not being pushed too quickly, but he's the type of dude that's ready for any challenge. So I'm really high on JK.
And do you think he can play the three? Because I mean, that's part of the Andrew Wiggins conundrum. And I know Kerr's worried about spacing, but do you think if they need to call upon him to step up more to do that? I mean, you can't just replace Wiggins' absence. He does so much, but you guys may have to start planning for that.
Yeah, I think it is there, and the ability is there, and the good thing with our offense is that everyone is moving so much, so we don't really run like, okay, JK, run the three, get a high screen and roll. Like there's moments where we call his number, whether it's get it in the post because it's a mismatch, or he can take someone off the dribble or run that pick and roll. So I think there is an ability. I think we're lucky that we run our offense, so it's not like, okay, Steph's on the bench or Jordan's in foul trouble. JK, we need you 4 or 5 minutes straight, go to work. And because I think to me that would also really unfairly rush his development. But I do think there are spurts where he can definitely run that three.
Got you. So something that I've been noticing, like the recent games, is like his processing is becoming like so much faster, right? He's starting to see things happen before they happen, and he's making the reads super quick. Do you attribute that to like just game reps, or is that something you guys go over with him in like film and he's applying it to the games? Like, how does that look on you guys end as far as like developing that aspect of his game, or is it like innate to him that it's just coming as he gets more reps?
I think it's a culmination of things. Like first off, one of the more underrated things about him coming into the league is he has a really good basketball IQ. I think there was questions from the outside of whether he did, but he has a really, really good basketball IQ for someone that's only been playing as long as he has.
From the outside.
Yeah, and then I think
those voices were, but go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think our coaches, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that people don't see. He had a really good summer last summer where he played with his national team. He played a lot of pickup in our gym. He was doing his own work and back in New York and whatnot. And so I think it's a culmination of a lot of the individual work that he's putting in, but also to pick up our system, you have to play a lot. Like it's a lot of read and react. We have some of our set plays and some of our specials, but it's a lot of read and react. And I think for him, it just, and he always, if you ask him, he always says this too. It's like he needed time. And I think he's picked it up where like you see that IQ, you see that the ability to make others better. And then when you're playing with the best player in the world, it just happens. And so
makes me happy every time you say it. It sounds like you're describing a player with a great work ethic. And I bring that up because there were reports coming out, kind of questioning his work ethic. And on its face, I just was like, do y'all know where Jonathan Kuminga is from and his story and where he got here? The idea to even question his work ethic is it's just inconsistent with who he is and where he's come from. You don't get to this level and to this point without having an impeccable work ethic. So I found it really offensive, but I'm glad to hear you talking about this because sometimes fans and people jump onto that, and I'm just like I don't know why this keeps coming up with him. The kid wants to play. Sorry, I shouldn't call him a kid. He's a grown man, but he wants to play. And I don't have a problem with him feeling frustrated about not playing or wanting to play. He's an incredible talent. And he's also in a unique situation because a lottery pick going to any other team is going to play. But that's not the case when you come to a team like the Warriors, who are already a championship team, and you sort of have to wait in line. So look, I don't know him. I don't know what was going on in his head, but I would defend him, like he was my family, because I just didn't like it, what was being said.
Yeah, that report, I think, one, it wasn't true, but then like Bob came out and I think in the training camp press conference and spoke on it. Like he was amazing last summer. He like whatever we needed him to do, he was doing it. And then I think to me, it's like when you look at his situation as a 20-year-old, well, 19 coming into this year, a 20-year-old to break into the rotation and be an important piece for the defending champions, like you don't do that if there's work ethic questions, And so for me, I think like I don't know where that report came from, but I'm glad to see that he's proven all of that wrong. Like you've seen the praise that Coach Kerr has heaped on him and his teammates, and he's kind of remained humble through it all and still trying to improve. Like he knows this is just a piece of what he's going to be.
Okay. Yeah, the one last thing I'll say about JK from me is that you were kind of talking about the things he's working on and improving. So I was happy to hear about his handle. His footwork to me at this stage is like so impressive for where he is. And I'm just like, as soon as he kind of gets his touch around the rim a little bit more, because he'll do all this stuff and then he gets there and he just doesn't get it in, or and I know that's going to come with time, but like to me, when that starts to happen, it's going to be like, watch out, And so is that something he's also just like continuing to work on?
Yeah, and that's because he's so explosive. So sometimes he takes off quicker, he gets higher than he's expecting. But I think once he works on all of those different combinations off the dribble, I think it's going to come natural. That's why I just tell him dunk everything. I mean, all of us always say just dunk everything. But I think, the more reps he gets at that and the more he practices it, especially against competition and defense, I think he's going to put it all together.
How does because obviously he's broken into the rotation and he's like a fixture in their rotation now. On the flip side, Moses, who's from obviously his same class and they came in together, how are you guys like approaching his development? And obviously he's more of a long-term, development piece rather than like a guy that's being counted on at the moment. Like, what are you guys like focusing on with him as far as like things that he needs to be looking at while he's like on the bench, or like specific skills, or maybe at like strength or something like that? Is there anything in particular you guys are like, you need to hone on to this and then we'll, be able to bring you on more consistently?
Yeah, I think with Moses, it's been tough because when you look at his position too, it's like, that's one of our strengths. Yeah. And it's so hard because anyone that knows Moses as a person like knows that he does everything that's asked of him at 100%. He's like the most mature 20-year-old that I've ever come across. And he plays hard, even when his name gets called for a minute or two, like I know he's just been a joy for the coaches to coach. So that the thing with him is it's so hard to find consistent minutes when you're competing with a Gary Payton, a Dante, a Klay Thompson, and a Wiggins. And so, but for him, the certain things that I think he separates himself as is Moses is one of our better rebounders from the wing position. And there's been moments, even you see in the past, week and a half or so, where he's had a couple of stretches to play. Is like there's just moments where he helped. We're not the biggest team, so he helps us in terms of showing up rebounding. The shooting, he's kind of he's going up and down right now in terms of shooting, but Moses is a knockdown shooter and he's a confident shooter. So he's gonna get it off. So it's those type of things. Defensively, he's got that length, he can cover ground. He's a really good team defender. So for him, it's just a matter of like finding an opportunity to do that consistently. And it's so difficult because we've got such a rotation that the coach has to manage. But I think he's getting the right work in. Jam has been great with him in terms of making him understand, like, look, your number could be called at any moment. And so to me, it's like Moses, I think, and again, it's another situation where if he was on a team, that wasn't competing, Moses, with his talent level and his skill and his ability to be coached, he's looking at 20 minutes a night, and I think he puts up some big numbers. And so I'm high on Moses too. I think Moses is going to be a fixture for us. So he's doing all the right things, and so he's just got to keep at it.
That's good to hear. Justin's high on him too. I mean, I am too, but that's
I've
Justin's
been
guy. Same question, but for PBJ really quickly. And then we can move on because there's a couple other things I want to hit with you before we go.
Yeah, well, PBJ, PBJ is the quintessential coach's son. Like, you tell PBJ one basketball thing once and he doesn't forget it. Like, I thought it was really impressive after the Nets game when we played Brooklyn on the road and we were down a bunch of our guys, and he got a lot of run. And I won't say it was after or before the game in one of his press conferences, he was talking about, I watched KD play, and I noticed when, if he goes left, he's getting to a pull up. If he goes right, he's going to a crossover. And I was like, damn, you only been in the league for a year and you already picking up on stuff like that. So to me, he doesn't know yet, but that's gonna help him so much down the line. And then one thing that we always try to analyze, from a scout's perspective, is, does this guy have an NBA skill? And PBJ does with his shooting, but then he also has positional size. And so I think if he doesn't suffer that ankle injury in college, this was a kid that I was number one in this class. McDonald's All-American. So with him, it's like we were really excited when we were able to get him at 28. Not only just because of his ability on the court, but we knew the player that we were going to get. We knew, the coaches would love coaching him. We knew that, he would understand the process. And so with him, like, you've already seen moments where he's coming to the game and he's letting it fly. Like, he's not phased at all. And he's already picking up certain things, like, he's picking up charges, and we've thrown him in there to play the 5 at times. And so it's just, the NBA is such a it's the best league in the world. And, like, I think nowadays there's this expectation, like, 19-year-olds are supposed to pick it up right away. And, like, I think, he's in that boat of, like, kid has it all to succeed. And it's just a matter of, like, you got to let it play out and let him develop. But I think he's going to be really good as well.
Yeah, man. I love him. I've kind of hoped that Kerr would give him a little bit more, burn this season, but he hasn't. I know how Kerr is about vets and liking to play players with more experience. So I'm looking forward to what's to come from him next year. And who knows, maybe at some point in the playoffs, something happens that gives him a little chance for us to see him. But I'm high on PBJ, and we just continue to extend the light skin family over here. All right. So let's move on, because I want to get to a few things before we wrap. So in terms of last night's game, though, great team win. I mean, there were just contributions by so many. We talked a lot about JK already. We mentioned Draymond and what he did. Defensively, he was a beast, as he always is. The intensity he brought. We'll get to 30 in a moment. But I also thought that, Loon did really huge things last night. Dante, that close of the third quarter where they just, they got some stops. GP2, we've seen already the little impact plays from him since he's come back, but he got that, I think Jordan was credited with the steal, but it was really, he deflected the ball. Mm-hmm. Who was it that he deflected that on at the end of the third? I don't even remember.
Yeah, I think it was Brandon.
Mm-hmm. It was Ingram? Yeah. And so, like, the way that they closed that out to, like, close the lead, so 4, that was just amazing. But there were so many great, meaningful contributions all around. And I bring up Jordan because he was huge last night. And he's been huge for the Warriors throughout this season. Last year, he was huge for them in the playoffs and with Clay out and 30 out. And I just look and I feel like I remind myself that Jordan is still a young developing player, even as much as he's accomplished. And he's being asked a lot, come off the bench, start, do this one night, do something else another night. And so he gets, the fan base is pretty critical of him. He catches a lot of heat. He said in an interview with Bonte and then the other day, like, in a post game, like, yeah, he hears the noise. And I was like, yeah, he's talking to y'all, Dubs Twitter. But I mean, I just want to know what you think of the criticism he receives. And I'm not saying he's above criticism and some of it isn't fair, but your thoughts on that and just what have you seen from Jordan as a player in developing and his role ongoing on this team?
Yeah, I think to me, like, criticism is obviously a part of this industry. I think sometimes people get carried away. So to me, it's the type of criticism. Like, you can say, look, hey, he's not shooting it well. Like, Jordan's a smart player. He knows when he's not shooting well. He's aware. His work ethic is probably, I want to say, top 5 on our team. Like, and for someone that's 23 years old to be that high and it's never changed. All 4 of his years, he's been on that type of time. And so if you can criticize in terms of like, oh, he's not shooting it well, or, he's got to keep the turnovers down. That's fine. But I think sometimes with him, it kind of gets overboard a little bit, like, oh, and I think when he meant, like, I see what y'all are talking about, like, yo, don't get to criticizing my work ethic, don't get to criticizing the impact that I have. Like, I contributed to a championship.
Exactly.
And I think that's what he was trying to get to. Like, yo, is everyone 30 will have stretches where he's not doing well. Clay, it's 82 games in the regular season. You can't. That's why you have to build a overall good team, because you can't expect someone to be consistent year round. And so I think he's trying to get to that point. But to me, it's like Jordan is a bucket. Like, that's what he is. And like, so when he's on, you're just like, damn, like he can play. But then when it's not going in, you're like, okay, you know what? He's got to find ways to impact the game otherwise. And you saw that last night a little bit with his playmaking, the Dallas game where he was able to get it going a little bit. And so it's like with him, I think he's figuring it all out. He is 23 years old. Like, he's asked to play a role basically, like, when Steph is off the court, you're not only, getting points, but you're also the playmaker. And so for him, I think he's like you said it perfectly. He's still 23 years old. Like, yeah, he's really good, but he's 23. He's figuring it out. Like, he's figuring out when to impact the game, when to defer to 30 and Clay. And so, like, it's the ups and downs of being an NBA player.
You alluded to his work ethic, and you alluded to JK's work ethic earlier as well. At like what point does it become like, hey, you guys get to do, whatever you want over the summer, like you're in charge of your entire off-season regimen? Or is it like, hey, we have these things available to you if you're in town, we're offering these scrimmages, 5-on-5s, workouts if you're here, but if you want to go do your own thing in Miami or LA or New York, you can do that as well? Like, how does that whole process work for like off-season, you guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for the most part, our guys are really good about being in market. Like, Steph has a family, so he's here for the most part. Jordan is like, anyone that knows Jordan is like the definition of to himself. So like last summer it was good to see him go travel, and he had a trainer with him all summer. But there's not really like a definitive like, hey, you get to year 4, year 5, and it's flipping over. It's kind of like, when we get together and plan out our summer development plan, it's like, okay, these are, the things we want this guy to get better at. Like, this is what it's going to take. And we also, if a guy is like, you know what, I'm going to Milwaukee for home, we let him know, hey, we have resources. If you'd like us, to, send a trainer or something like that, like, let us know. Have one of our coaches come check in on you or whatever. So it's to answer your question, it's not really like, hey, you get to year 4, you start producing this much. And, it's just the guys have really good feel of I got to be around this much. But then also, want to do this much. And then also the players with kids and families, that's when they have vacations and whatnot. So I think, and that tends to be the older players.
Yeah. The one final thing I'll say about Jordan, I loved when Clay in his postgame the other day when he was asked about Jordan's late game execution, which I do think is something that was fair to ask about because he struggled at times with it. But Clay's answer, in terms of his confidence level in Jordan was like, or why he has it. And he like turned and pointed to like the championship sideline. It was like, because of that, he's already helped us win one. And as in general, this team talks with the utmost confidence. I believe them when they say it, and Justin and I are two people who we still think that they can win it all. But I mean, I guess that's what else are you going to say? You have to believe that too because you work with the team. But I mean, do you believe the Warriors can still win it all? And despite everything that has happened this season, despite the home record and road splits, do you have that belief as well?
Yeah, and I think when I say it, when Clay says it, whoever says it, we don't say it lightly. Like, there's a lot of really good teams. Like we see what Milwaukee and Boston are doing in the East. We see what, the Denvers, the Memphises, the LA and Phoenix are doing in the West. But like I think for us, one, we haven't really been whole all year. And when I say whole, I mean like GP, Wiggins, Steph, like everybody.
Yeah.
So like there's always this question of, okay, what can we do when we're whole? Secondly, I think when you have a team that's led by Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and they've never lost a playoff series together, you can't have anything but confidence. And I think also like we've done a good job when we've played, really mostly at home, but the Milwaukee's, those top tier teams when we've played them at home, whether we're short a player or whatever, I think we've done a good job of kind of stepping up to the occasion. And so the hope is when you get to the playoffs, that's really where our team is comfortable. And I think, people can say what they want about, Coach Kerr and the staff, but in the playoffs, his ability to, and really it's his whole staff, not just him, but their ability to kind of make adjustments, whether it's lineup adjustments you saw last year with Otto starting. And then we also just have a roster of guys like, I think Looney is just one of the most underrated human beings in the NBA because his ability to just, okay, I'll come off the bench, but I'm gonna still give you 20 rebounds, like his impact last night. And so when you have guys like that that are willing to adjust and bend, and then really last thing is the skill level. We just think that the offense that we run when we're locked in defensively, that's really the big key. I think it's we can kind of match up and really beat any team that's out there. And so I think that's why those guys say it. I believe it as well. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody in our building that doesn't believe it. And so, but every other team probably believes they will win too. So again, we can't go into any matchup taking it lightly.
Well, of course not, except the Warriors have done it. And like you can do the, the diplomatic thing and say,
Yeah.
but like, come on, the West has a bunch of mid in the West. Like none of them teams beating the Warriors 4 times in a series. We can maybe talk about in the finals with some of those teams in the East. But yeah, I need to see a team beat the Warriors 4 times for me to believe it will happen. That's it. I don't see anybody right now in the West. No one, not the Suns with KD, not the supposed MVP Jokic, none of them. Okay. So in our last few minutes, you have said now twice you called 30 the best player in the world. And
Yes.
I mean, you already know I think that, and Justin believes that, but we get a lot of pushback from people, but is that like, do you believe that? Like, truly, are you just saying that because you're on the coaching staff? I mean, not the coaching staff, but the player development staff for the Warriors?
No, I when I make that statement, it's purely from just a hoop head perspective because to me, it's like I think nowadays we get so caught up on like ball is life, hoop mixtape, and so you want the guy that's dribbling 20 times, tween, cross, and then
Ball don't
shooting.
stop.
Yeah, and to me, it's like when you watch this dude, like when he cuts, the impact it has, or when he's on the court in general. Every possession that we have, if we run a Steph and Draymond high screen, it's 4-on-3 on the back end. because two people have to blitz Steph. To me, like when you look at that, it's how much he makes his teammates better, and then the pure shot making ability at such an efficient rate, the rebounding at from his position, but then also like the piece that I think a lot of people don't look at is like he makes it so much easier for us to do our job in the front office, but then the coaching staff to do their job. Because when you have a guy like that on the court, the endless amount of things you can draw up, he's clutch. Defensively, I think he's underrated. Like to me, it's not like he's perfect. He has his downfalls, like as any player does. Like in the NBA is at the highest level that's ever been. But to me, it's just his ability to impact winning and to make others better is just at 35 years old. Nonetheless, it's hard for me to put another player above him right now.
This is why you will always be welcome on this show. No, seriously, I wish you didn't have to go. There's like a zillion other things I want to ask you, so you have to come back and chop it up with us. He's brilliant, and I know why the Warriors hired you. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope y'all enjoyed the conversation. Let them know your handle. So I mean, maybe you don't want a bunch of crazy fans following you, but I think the people who listen to our podcast are good. So let them know how they can find you.
Absolutely. And man, this is how you know I don't really use social media. I'm trying to remember my handles. I think on Instagram it's like M_Elgoodah 2. So my last name too. And then on Twitter, I want to say it's like
I'm about to tell you. I'm gonna help you out.
I don't know what it is on Twitter.
It is. Let's see. It's why did this go ahead? It's M Elgoodah. Yeah, your last name.
Okay, so yeah. Yeah, so it's the same on Twitter. So yeah, that's where you guys can find me. I don't tweet or post, so you're not going to be very entertained, but go ahead and follow me if you want.
Well, if you want to hear from him some more, we'll definitely have him back on. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Of course. I appreciate you guys having me.
All right. You guys know the drill. Follow, share, download. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Golden Spaces Pod. Hope you enjoyed this episode and definitely enjoyed that win last night. Let's go.